What is up, you savages? This is the Protect Your Neck podcast, and I'm your host, Dan Tom. Analyst is work you'd find over at MMAJunkie.com. And on this here program, the Protect Your Neck podcast, we break down high-level MMA. That's what we're going to do today, tonight. Whenever you're listening to this, hopefully it's before the fight, recording this around 8 p.m. West Coast Pacific time, specifically in Las Vegas, where hashtag UFC Las Vegas 3 UFC on ESPN 11, the fight card that we will be breaking down in question will be taking place, so it'll be out tonight as well, so you guys should have plenty of times to listen to this from the weigh-ins and onward. We'll kind of weigh in on the weigh-ins because we've been having some weight misses, but before I get too far in, let me just remind those of you who are normal listeners, especially those who aren't, you can always check the timestamps, whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts or the uploaded version on YouTube or any other podcast platform, or the hosting site, mixedmartialanalyst.com, which carries smartphone-friendly players there. I always have timestamps in the show notes, especially for these breakdown iterations of the show. You can check the timestamp for when the breakdown starts, albeit there won't be a lot to cut through, nor should this be a long show, especially since we already recap the previous card, so we don't have to worry about that here. And of course, at the end of all breakdown episodes, I recap all of my picks and all of my plays in case you're in a rush or you just don't feel like listening to me, which, again, I don't blame you on the latter. Alrighty, yes, Dan, we get it. You're the self-deprecating humor. Ha 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 ha. No, but seriously, I appreciate you guys joining me. Thank you also. Just real quick, some shouts before we get to the breakdown. Like I just warned, just want to get some shouts and some listener questions out of the way, which you can always hit us up at the podcast, at the PYN podcast on all social platforms. Give us a follow there. It's a huge help. And I don't spam your feeds, or you can DM me directly at DanTomMMA on Twitter. And also, again, subscribe. You maybe can't reach out there unless we're doing live, one of the live shows. But still, it helps for the likes and subscribes on the old YouTube channel, Daniel Tom MMA. Thank you so much. And thanks for the love on the article earlier this week. I know I kind of hinted at it. It was really hard to write, as you can see why. You open yourself up when you write about certain topics, and especially if you write about anything that involves yourself, because whether it comes off wrong, right, spirit, it was intended, or so on. You never want to sound like you're an authority on anything, and even things that I specialize in, like this breakdown stuff. Even that, you guys know, I'm not the authority. I've never claimed to be. So I'm always very careful about that, even in my specialties of sorts, much less something I don't specialize in, like the old op-ed or writing. That being said, I've got a lot of compliments from a lot of people that it counts, from colleagues, non-colleagues, colleagues from competitor sides, colleagues from my side, people, all of which people who can write a whole lot better than me, by the way. So to hear that feedback, and then especially to, which again, probably no surprise, but just, whether it was people of a platform or our colleagues or just random followers, a lot of people, of color or other minorities, sexual or otherwise, definitely just appreciated just that kind of a voice. So thank you guys for that. As far as the negative stuff goes, that was expected, I guess. With anything like that, like I said, there's a lot of fair and well-meaning stuff there. And then again, I claim to be no authority. That wasn't the point. But as you know, Dan Tom here, I also believe, for better or worse, in speaking honestly. And some of the best ways to speak honestly is to tether your own story, or to come at something that's been beaten to death, to kind of tie it to your own experiences. So again, this isn't going to be the Dan Tom political hour or activism hour. I'm not trying to woke flex. There's plenty of things. If that was the case, you would have heard from me, but you're not going to hear about any of that stuff, whether it's care packages or anything else. But if you do have a platform, there are certain things that maybe, at least, teach their own. But for me, some things that I felt wasn't important to speak on. Thank you. Not going to get into it. We're going to get back to breakdowns here. Don't worry. But I just definitely wanted to voice my appreciation, because it's funny, the whole COVID stuff, kind of exposes a lot of a lot of dumb people. This whole, the unfortunate George Floyd tragedy and onward protests have kind of exposed a lot of racists. And Twitter, for the most part, usually exposes bottom feeders, and I think or will always expose / encourage bottom feeding, which is a whole nother conversation. But that doesn't mean there aren't really cool people too, man. And I'm super grateful for those cool people. I'm super grateful for you guys. Also grateful for Nate Evans, who came on the program at MMA True Fan for episode 200. Another parlay of the thank yous to knock out. Just thank you guys again there. Episode 200, some kind words and whatnot. And I just appreciate you guys. Appreciate Nate's time. Hopefully you dug the extra impromptu episode. And last shout here to Ant Evans and his Bruce Lee article, which is awesome. I shared it. It's on his blog. I believe it's like Ultimate Insider. So I don't want to quote the address. I'll slaughter it. But Ant Evans on Twitter. Great Twitter follow. And I always learn something when I exchange with Ant. And it was a very, I learned a ton from that article, man. And about Bruce Lee. And I appreciate his position because, at the end of the day, we all maybe focus on different things or choose different routes to get there. But I completely agree with Ant that too many people focus on the myth and not the man. And there's a lot to unpack with that. And Ant does a good job. So go check that out. All right. MMA at MMA_Yusuf has two questions I think I can answer relatively quickly. And we'll jump right to this breakdown. First one is, what would happen if Khabib took Maia down? I'm assuming it's an MMA. I'm also going to assume that, it's at welterweight or, because that's the only weight class it could happen. And 3, I'm going to assume it's not, I don't know what prime Maia is, but we'll just call it developed Maia, which is later end Maia career, these last, 5 years, from welterweight on, that iteration of Maia. Because if it was the younger iteration, then perhaps Khabib would have to worry about the triangle arm bars series that Damian would hit in the gi and out of the gi in a lot of tournaments, like back in the days where he was competing in open weights and like tapping heavyweights and shit. But as we've seen Damian's game progress, he's embraced wrestling. He's got his whole, which I'm not going to dive into. People know the spiel here, the whole half guard sitting up into a single leg game. And I believe that's what he would do. I think he would have some successes, at least early on in the grappling contests, and perhaps we could see some of the game off of the back that, we've only gotten to see glimpses of from early on in his matches with Abel Trujillo to the glimpses of him, hitting triangles but then from the mount and then dropping to his back and finishing from the Pro FC days. But you could tell that there's a lot there that Khabib can grapple off of his back, and I think we would be forced to see that at some point of the fight. I'll take the easy answer here and say it would probably be like a Randy Couture, Jacare Souza situation where they would go to a draw. Of course, I'm referencing a grappling match, not an MMA fight that we just hypothetically contextualized there. But yeah, I mean, it's really tough to say because of the savvy from top and bottom. And even though Maia is old, he grapples to his style. He's very strong. He's going to have that size and. But yet both guys are familiar, at least conceptually, with a lot of the positions each man likes to play off of. So I would love to nerd out in my, I would be very excited, to say the least, to watch that. So apologies on the wish-wash answer, but that's my answer. Takedown scoring. I don't want to cheat his context, but he was essentially asking me about how are takedowns scored in the UFC. Does damage need to be accumulated to win a round, or is a takedown enough? Seen fights scored differently. Yeah, we have seen fights scored differently. Traditionally, in the mid to late aughts especially, I mean, the takedown had already established itself by then in MMA and scoring and stylistically. However, we've seen the trend in the last few years or so. I would say we've been, 5 to 3 years or so, we've been slowly moving away from rewarding a takedown, even control time to a certain extent, depending if damage is being done. And damage is the key word. Damage is a word that I try to use a lot. Again, with the way judging breaks down, you really can be open to interpretation. I know I don't know if he shared it in a minute, but shouts to Sean Sheehan. I know he had, I think it was Ben Cartledge on one of his podcasts. And they do a great job kind of breaking down judging that I recommend you guys go listen to. But damage, I just try to keep things simple and really focus and emphasize on damage. As it, it should be a primary score. And now they're attaching that, whether it's the takedown itself or the control time gotten from the takedown, or at least they should in theory. Again, we've seen it scored differently. We've seen it not just score, but officiated differently, right? And how much time they're being allowed to work and whatnot. So each is up to interpretation. Each is up to argument. But takedowns to seal the round, that used to be a big trend. We've seen that go away. That doesn't really do much these days. So you really got to be committed to your takedown game, and you really got to do something with it, and have the cardio to push that game in case you can't get to your finishing positions. So, again, grappling attrition's a motherfucker. Casuals might complain about it, but boy, is it really tough. And whether you, I, or anyone else agrees with it or not, it's only going to get tougher in MMA. All right, 12 minutes in. Hopefully that was a good enough answer. We're gonna blow through this breakdown here. UFC and ESPN 11, headlined by Curtis Blaydes, who is now inflated to a minus 430 favorite against Alexander Volkov, plus 345 in the main event. Alexander Volkov looking to reestablish his place as the dark horse, whereas Curtis Blaydes, despite having an obvious roadblock of Francis Ngannou, has never really been a dark horse because he's always been the favorite in his fights, and rightfully so. I mean, I don't think I picked against him yet. I picked him to beat Ngannou the first time and the second time. So, as asinine as it sounds to have him the favorite, at least for the second time, I mean, I get it. I was picking him as well. Granted, I wasn't like uber confident, but just saying. I did the in-depth on MMAJunkie.com. Hopefully you checked it out. Thanks for Benny Abs for the shout. I just saw that before I hopped on here to record on Twitter. Talking about the dipping propensities, the upper body level changes of Curtis. We've seen him in the positive as far as adapting that wrestling into striking and using the striking to get into his wrestling. Hence, you'll see him do a really good job of rolling off of his twos. It's one of my favorite things. And boxing, striking, MMA, rolling off that too, baby. You want to commit to your power punch? Well, it's easier to commit knowing you have an exit plan. And rolling out from it's a pretty decent exit plan. And it can, chain to other things like double leg takedowns. As, obviously George St. Pierre gets a ton of credit, as he should, for doing the strikes to level changing takedowns. But one Rashad Evans, particularly when we're talking about rolling off the twos and using it for your double leg entries, he was really helping write that book at that time, in the mid to late aughts as well. So, Curtis is doing his own version of that. He's been shifting much better with his footwork while we're staying on the striking. Shifting his stance, not just shifting his stance, but looking for, and not that outside angles on the open stance, southpaw to orthodox are end-all be-alls, but you can tell he's looking for that. More importantly, he's looking for that in the sense of, it almost reminds me of a Kamaru Usman. They obviously move much differently. They're in different weight classes, but both these guys are very athletic wrestlers who can move very well. And you see them shift their stance, not for flashy stuff like, look at me, I want you to worry about the strikes I'm going to throw, or I'm going to switch up and not for look at me, but I'm just going to hit you with the strikes because I'm a badass stance shifter. It's not necessarily neither of the two. It's, again, why I compare him to the Kamaru Usman, because it's all with a corralling theme to it. And Blaydes is getting much better at that, and that's a dangerous proposition for Volkov, considering they're going to be fighting in a smaller cage. These are very big men. That being said, kind of what I originally started off when referencing Benny's quote tweet on my article was the upper body dipping propensities, and to tack one on there, shelling propensities of Curtis Blaydes. We know the shell or variations of your shell defense, basically hands up by the sides of your face there. It's going to open up to body shots and uppercuts up the center. Shots down the center in that fashion. And Volkov, as we've seen throughout his career, but particularly in that Verdum finish that he got. He's got a pretty good uppercut there, accurate. He'll spam it once he finds it too. He's not afraid of doing that, especially facing a guy who wants to grapple with him. So that's going to be the punch to look out for in this fight in general. Again, Blades, he beat Dos Santos to the punch, which I know Dos Santos is aging. That's a whole other story. But the point is, Blades, yes, I'm not dismissing him on the feet. He could end this fight on the feet as well. I mean, look what happened with Derek Lewis, third round, right? You got to counter the kick or those knees at the right time. Volkov loves those knees. But the uppercut, I think, will be the shot to look for. And kind of like Blades tweeted not too long ago, before getting on here, he's saying don't expect a 25-minute war on the feet. He's going to wrestle and ragdoll Volkov. All the lines are pretty much too inflated. I got Blades a little early, but even that I was kind of I'm putting him on. It's just I know a 3-leg parlay. It's you're not looking for sharp plays here if you're trying to follow me off that cliff. But I do play parlays for fun, folks, and as per usual, I'm gonna be very honest about what I play, as I always am. And I did put Blades in a 3-leg theme parlay, if you want to say here, as we will get to that. Shane Burgos minus 245. Oh yeah, I got Curtis Blades. Getting Volkov down, and I think Volkov's improved scrambling ability, where he wants to turtle and stuff, is just gonna get him abused by a wrestling rider, mat returner like Blades. So yeah, Minasan. I think the traditional holes of Volkov's gonna cost him. Third round TKO. Shane Burgos co-main event minus 145 versus Josh Emmett plus 125. I like I always say, folks, I try to limit reading and listening to, especially those I admire, because you got to keep the filter clean. But every time Josh Emmett fights, I can't help but think of shout out to Phil McKenzie from the Heavy Hand podcast. I forget what he said a couple of fights ago or something. He said Josh Emmett was like one of the people from Fury Road. I was like, holy shit, Jesus Christ. And yeah, I think I don't want to. I already butchered one person, so I don't want to butcher two. But yeah, I think shouts to Danny Martin from the Fight Site, who also had a funny one. Poor Josh Emmett, man. He seems like such a nice guy too. But yeah. Wow, Dan, where were you going with that? Jesus Christ, you just cut the guy. Hey, folks. I mean, I'm a cross between fucking Short Round's retarded son and Drew and an Asian Drew Carey. Okay, so believe me, I'm not. Dan, you said you weren't going to use the R word. Okay, I'm sorry, folks. I apologize. Do not crucify for me. Protect Your Neck podcast was canceled today for its consecutive use of the R word. Just kidding, folks. In fact, you folks might know I'm actually more sensitive than you might realize when it comes to that too. Oh, not an article, Dan. Get with the breakdown. Okay, fine. I'm going to the breakdown. I'm just saying, it's not mean spirited. Dude, this was tough. So the cards have been so crazy and everything's been so crazy with the rolling furloughs and whatnot. We've just been kind of getting our picks in early at Junkie and not even just doing the main card. We're just kind of submitting picks for the whole card. And I hate doing revisions and make it in, anyone over there at Junkie do any more extra work or anything like that. And but I also, I'm careful about making picks too early because then taints a bias. So anyways, I'll come clean as I always do with fights that I haven't done the in-depth tape study on. But I did do enough skimming social medias and tapes, previous notes, etc. to just submit some early picks. And Shane Burgos was one of those, and I'm like, dude, I don't know. And I really, I actually did tape study on this one, but even the whole time still, I'm like, it's just, is it one of those things where Josh Emmett, for whatever reason, is one of those fighters where you could pick against or write off, and Shane Burgos is, no surprise to anybody listening to this podcast, someone I've like for a long time I had an eye on ever since, Burt Watson at a junkie gathering years ago when I was asking him like who's up and coming guys, who's someone you think you're gonna see in the UFC and who's gonna have it, and he's like Shane Burgos without even hesitating, and I'm like wow. Sure enough, Shane made it to the UFC and he's done pretty good for himself outside of outing with Calvin Kattar. But you look at it, Calvin Kattar is a puncher, and I don't doubt his punching abilities, whether I picked him or not. Again, folks, not only did I pick him against Stevens, but I told you he's going to be one of the few people to stop Jeremy Stevens, and sure enough. So when he has one against punchers or proficient strikers, is that it? He's getting hit with right hands like all the time. Some of it more than others. Some of it you can tell he doesn't really respect the right hand, like of Makwan Amirkhani, which I get it. Makwan's not the most ferocious striker, especially after round one. And it was a bit messy and crazy, but he handled him accordingly, got him out of there, pursued the finish all the way to the better end. But there's a price to pay for Burgos' slip and countering styles. I didn't. Boy, I gotta get on. I gotta get with this Patreon thing. I feel like everybody's on board with it. But I know Jack Slack posted something on his Patreon. I saw him post it on Twitter. I know obviously Jack Slack does amazing work. But I forget what the headline it was, but it was something along those lines. Like he pays a price for his style. Now he gets a lot of finishes early. So he seems to get his range early, and interviews I was listening to, which did a lot of James Lynching on that Score MMA YouTube channel. Big shouts to them and James. Shane is saying that he's like, yeah, he's got a big right hand, but I think I can get a beat on it. And that's kind of a scary proposition because even, it's like you can't say, oh, once he gets a beat on it, he'll be fine once he gets past round one, because it's like, well, no. Calvin Kattar finished him in round 3, and we've seen, of course, Josh Emmett against Michael Johnson in a fight that he was losing, score a knockout in round 3. So it's really tricky. Josh Emmett is one of the guys amongst a few who I would predict may not make weight because of the shorthand matchmaking. He's a big guy. He needs like everything right to hit 145, and so is Shane, but Shane just seems like a maniac with his discipline and cardio, and that shows in his fights. Shane seems to think Josh Emmett is going to try to take him down, which I've never felt it was a big part of his game. Like, can he do it? Does he do it? Yes. And does he do it to score? Sure. But it just doesn't feel like the most strongest part of his game, and I feel like I still ended up, I never changed my pick, so the pick is Shane Burgos here. But I feel like the value, not just because he's the underdog, but yeah, I mean, I feel like there's some value on Josh Emmett, plus money and all, but also because I guess what I'm trying to say is that, am I getting bullshitted here just because of what I said earlier? Looking for a reason to discount Josh Emmett, or looking for a reason to pump up a style that I like with Shane Burgos, but as much as you like a style, not every style is invincible. Every style has a thwart, and what's going to thwart Shane Burgos' style? Well, maybe a guy who can control the wrestling enough and can counter with emphatic, life-changing power. And who has got life-changing power in this division? Josh Emmett's toward the very top of that list, So this could just be a hiccup for Shane Burgos. He could be knocked out fast or winning the whole time and knocked out. I wouldn't be surprised. Props to y'all if you're taking a plus money shot on Mr. Emmett. That being said, reaffirming that the reach is going to be 5 inches plus, as long with a height 5 inches plus. Seeing Shane use more of a jab than I remember, I feel like he can win this fight. Should he be able to take the power? Not that he wants to take the power. I think he's got to know about that right hand, like he said. And I think if Josh Emmett goes to take him down, it's going to be worse for him. Or if Josh Emmett hurts Burgos early and can't finish him, I think that's going to be bad. Especially if Josh either kills himself to make weight or kills himself and still misses weight. And then he exerts a lot of takedowns or hurts Burgos, like many of us think, but then he can't finish him, right? and then you just got a building demon on you. And Burgos was outclassing them, and we're like, oh, yeah, well, yeah, this is what was going to happen all along. So for that reason, I ended up sticking with the Burgos pick, but I'm throwing it on my avoid list because I'm so conflicted, clearly. And, it's an important fight. I like both guys, although I really like Shane Burgos much more stylistically. There could be a bias there because of that. So from my perspective of giving you my pick to what I'm personally playing, it's on my avoid list, but the pick is Burgos. That being said, if you think Emmett's going to get the knockout and you play it, I don't hate you. And even though the number is starting to climb, but if you got Burgos, anything minus 140 or below even, there's an easy argument to make that he can outclass Emmett. So, I don't blame anybody. That's why I feel weird putting it on the avoid list, because I feel like there's going to be people on both sides of this, and both sides have an argument here. I've gotten myself into my own head for whatever reason, or the reasons I've stated. So, picks Burgos. Sorry for the long breakdown. Next ones won't be so long, but I'm staying away. Also on the stay away list, and I was conflicted to the very end, but I actually went through and watched tape, as painful as some of it was, but we got Raquel Pennington minus 175 and Marion, the Belizean Bruiser, plus 155. I'm glad I went with my gut here, I guess. Well, maybe I'm not, right? We'll see how the fucking fight plays out. But I ended up submitting Marion Renault, and I was kind of skeptical about it because I got appreciation for Rocky Pennington, too. But just what was in my head, I didn't like. And then I went back and watched the last couple fights of each, and I was like, yeah, it's deceptive. Win or lose, it's deceptive, Marion Renault, she really makes some really poor decisions and gets rounds stolen from her when she fights. Who is it? It's not Mama Kunitskaya. Mama Kunitskaya. Yana Kunitskaya. Yeah. Kat Zingano, right? But that could just been a stylistic match, and I would bet Kat to beat that version of Kat of 2018 bit Raquel, and I know they fought and Kat did beat her. I'm just saying, even within that, within that context of relevant time, or relevant to that time of 2018 and 2019, we haven't seen her since March 2019, which is crazy, right? So maybe perhaps that's another reason for the line. She faced Yana Kunitskaya, and it's pretty competitive. Yana, I forget how big Yana is, man, because Marion is a big, strong 135, and Yana was just almost looked like another weight class. And I saw Yana Kunitskaya, before, they were publicized a couple, at, the Contender Series shows, when he was still, hobbling around. It was all, pretty seriously braced and crutched up. And I didn't even recognize her. I was just like, oh, okay, look at Maheta Santos got the thick mamas helping him around. Look at that. Yeah, that's good on him. Good on him. They look cute. And I didn't even realize it was Yana Kunitskaya. I thought it was just some just very athletic, Broomhilda type chick. And I'm like, oh, that's Yana Kunitskaya. Okay. And I go back to rewatch fight. I'm like, oh yeah, you forget. Man, she got to be disciplined to make that weight. And I hope I'm not coming off derogative, but I don't mean it at all. Again, hint, I say Mama Kunitskaya. She's an attractive woman, clearly. So I'm not trying to be negative here, folks, when I say that. I know we're all sensitive these days. So you got to be careful. They're both beautiful women, by the way. This guy and Renault, man, she's funny. She's gonna be 43 on fight night, killing it. Renault. A little positivity there. Dan, where you going? I don't know. Pull up. Stay on target. But it was a pretty competitive fight, and then you just see Renault smash her over, and that was one thing you could see. Renault's got power, man, that you could tell these girls really feel, and that will lead to them taking her down and either grinding out decisions that usually Renault will not come out on top of, or they'll get choked by Renault, and or because they don't want to get finished, or they'll take her down and into her guard. And she actually has a good guard, even though pulling guard has costed her. But you can also see kind of why, because even good grapplers like Zingano were like, okay, I want none of this. I'm going to stand back up. because that's how she gets back to her feet a lot. Her get-up game is still lacking, although her wrestling, and as far as the clench and defending shots, have slightly improved over the years. Her get-up game is still lacking in the sense of she's not using get-ups. She's either attacking. She's pretty much usually just threatening submissions and scaring people off, and they just back out, which says something. And Raquel Pennington's kind of like Paul Felder, where you talk about the striking, but they're quietly, an effective grinder, grappler, can ground and pound, or will lock up a submission or choke if you give them the opportunity. And that is Raquel Pennington. And Raquel Pennington if she wins, it's gonna look like the Cat Zingano fight in the sense of Marion Renault's gonna piece her up and do the more damage, but then she's gonna give away key parts, particularly toward the end of the round. Because by the end of the round, the fighters don't want to exchange with Renault. So they're either pushing her in the cage, or if they're confident they can stay out of her submissions, they're taking her down and grinding her out. And that's what Raquel Pennington's been doing. Everyone was surprised to see the Holly Holm fight end up that way. But I'm like, both girls have been trending to clenching. Like, why should we have not expected this to happen? So I think Pennington's definitely going to look to do that, especially seeing how people have been able to mute Renault before. However, Pennington's been real hit and miss there too, and even the girls she did quote unquote beat there, like she was kind of supposed to beat them there, like the Irene Aldanas of the world in certain instances, I believe, if memory serves, and even like a lot of those fights were splits that could have gone the other way. But she was able to seal the deal with the Aldana fight with getting that top position and then at the end of the round, hence how Renault could potentially lose this fight. And then she just hit the bank on having just won one of those rounds from Aldana, which she did in the judge's eyes. But if you look at it, you can really scrutinize, and I like Miesha Tate, but if you look at where people were in their career, you can kind of scrutinize some of these decisions and who Rocky's beaten and whatnot. And from what I thought in my head to what I confirmed in a lot of these fights, albeit not so much in relevant fights, win or lose, Raquel just looks like she wants out of there by the third round. She's just like, fuck, frustrated, just like not gassing by any means. She's having strong rounds statistically and literally, like in the Aldana fight, putting stamp on things when she needs to. So it's not like, oh, she's gassing out or giving up. Right, anything. I'm not saying or implying anything like that, but there's just something like, I'm over this. And she's in that point where she's in late prime to where she could still be in her prime, but she could also be falling out of it, fighting since 2009, so she's going on year 12. Year 12 to 14 is where you kind of fall out of that peak usually. You see the peak, but you're also starting to fall out of the peak. So where is Pennington in that state? We've seen her come in varying conditions as well, also, what kind of abuse. You talk about the early injuries early in her sports career, from breaking her back as a senior in high school to almost losing her leg, of course, and then she gets the leg kicks, from Amanda Nunes, which probably weren't going to feel good anyways, but you're like, oh, is the injury in her head? Well, another thing is, I think in like 3 of her last 4 fights, she's gotten her nose busted up pretty good. I want to say Raquel Pennington, if not 3 of her last 5 for sure, if not 3 of her last 4. And when your nose gets busted up like that, it can be really easy to offset. It can be easy to happen again. Something about noses or orbitals, something like that, when you get them busted and broken a couple times, like fighters can get in their own heads with it. And Renault, she's got a pretty good left hand as well as her right too. And you saw how she rearranged Yana Kunitskaya's nose. So that's something that I'm actually going to be looking for. Now, the small cage will probably encourage Raquel Pennington if she's looking to get her grapple on. And again, she's a much better grappler than she leads on. So maybe she is good enough to stay on top and frustrate Renault, right, and bank those rounds. So in that sense, okay, I could get why she's favored there. But I don't know if either of these girls, by the way, not picking on Raquel here, but I don't know if either of these girls, particularly Raquel, is someone you want to bet as a favorite. So I'm not going to bet Renault, unless maybe if I'm having a good night by this point, maybe I'll sprinkle a little bit. This one's actually going to be on my avoid list, though. But the pick is Marion Renault because even though the smaller cage could encourage a case for Pennington, I believe that the middle ground on whatever small cage theory you want to subscribe to, I believe that the logical middle ground is that it encourages more action. To what percent we can argue on, but regardless, to deny that it's not a degree would be silly. And in a fight that's going to produce a lot more action, I'm going to side with the girl who's more potent to get a finish on the floor, whether it's strikes, whether it's submissions, or on the feet, being that she's the more powerful athlete. And possibly the more speedier athlete, Marion Renault. Let's see if she learned these lessons like she claims she has in interviews. She's had plenty of time to work. Definitely a story I can get behind from the age, and the Randy Couture-like age. And let's not forget, folks, not dissing on the ladies here when I say that they're a little more behind. But they're like in like UFC 84 to UFC 104 territory, if like that makes sense if you're getting my analogies. So, we can still have these older athletes and outliers, or just being an athlete with some solid skills gets you real far regardless of your age. They're still within their own era of MMA in that regard. And then also with her inspiring story, as far as just, she's a teacher who's really had to adjust, man. These teachers, making fun of these journalists, or me making fun of myself, I should say, as far as, this adjusting period we've had to go through. Like, all these teachers have had to do that too. They've had to like learn Skype and all this other crap and be there for their students. And she has a son who was supposed to graduate this year, so it's hard not to be cheering for Renault, man, to really just put a big positive injection into that. So I'm gonna pick Renault to upset here and not go 3 straight. All right, I talked so long that I logged out of the odds there. So I pull these up to the next fight. I'll try to get through these a little faster, folks. Belal, remember the name Muhammad, minus 125. Comeback on Lyman, good, plus 105. I would say values on good. This is like a dog or pass. It's so close. Especially, and I didn't watch it fresh, but I remember being impressed by his performance against Chance. Takedown defense and keeping composed and being able to get that third round TKO. But if he doesn't finish Belal Muhammad, Belal keeps coming. He's like the goddamn Energizer Bunny. Now, I don't know if Belal's going to be able to get takedowns, even though he keeps improving in it all over his grappling area. But Belal knows that pressure is the key, at least from interviews about this matchup that I've heard. And I think that's the key, too. That's why I picked Belal. But then, you hear Lyman Good losing his father, plus he had the COVID. Like, damn, man. Life ain't fair, man. And props to Lyman Good fighting with the heavy heart. I have a hard time betting against guys like that. But I would say if you do like Belal, decision is plus 130 if you're looking for plus numbers. Otherwise, it's kind of dog or pass, and that's someone picking Belal. I mean, you sprinkle however you want. I don't know. I'm weird. I let morals get in the way sometimes. I feel bad, man. Dude's like tearing up in his interview, and fucking more power, man. Pain is pain, dude. And there's nothing to be ashamed about tearing up. He's a fucking fighter, dude. And ain't nobody gonna question the cojones on that, man. And Western culture has just emasculated any sense of balance. Well, emasculate men for any sense of balance. But dude, fucking being vulnerable and showing tears is nothing wrong. Nothing wrong with that, man. There's a lot of, from happiness to wanting it so bad to just pain. It's a natural human reaction that we all probably should do more as men. We'd probably fucking live longer. I remember I didn't cry for like a certain stretch of my life. I thought something was fucking wrong with me. I'm like, I probably have lost years of my life from it. And now I can't like research a fucking UFC card without like coming across something that gets me teary. Samurai is some of the most acclaimed warriors that this world has seen, and they always made it a point. The reason why they loved flowers and cherry blossoms, because it represents the fragility of life, how fast it can come and how fast it can go, folks. And having appreciation for art, nature, and beauty are things that we tend to emasculate men for in the Western world. With not so nice names, but embrace it. So hopefully Lyman Good can embrace all that, find an outlet for it, win or lose. He can get all that energy out. I can't imagine having to go through a camp with that pain. We saw Cody Stamann just break down, after it, holding it in, man. I'm sorry, I'm waxing poetic here. It's because I'm in just such awe with how much fucking bullshit these fighters have to put up with. Like, real life bullshit that people out there seem to forget, because we're in this society that loves to focus on people at their lows. Whether things are right or wrong, whether they're in context or not. It's you're at a low, I'm not. Look at you. To bolster me. And so when I see people in a low, man, I can't help but fucking root for them, man. And especially these fighters with just what we see with pay and all these things going against them. Like, to have to fight at a time like that, that's got to be intense. So, on that note, I'm picking Muhammad, but goddamn, man, do I feel for Lyman Good? Roosevelt Roberts minus 250, Jim Miller plus 210. By the way, I forgot to talk about Volkanovski's Metalocalypse cornerman in my notes here. If Alexander Volkov, if he wins, we'll get to see his Metalocalypse cornerman. It's like this tall guy who looks like, the 90s metalhead friend you all had or wish you had in the 90s, at least from my experiences. And he does the translating for Volkov. Basically, he says, very good fight, and we're here for the right reasons. And it's like, I don't know why. The guy just seems very comical to me. And my other note, while we're on this, come back on Jim Miller plus 210. By the way, I'm picking, I know who is it that always tweets me obligatory blind bet on Jim Miller. Believe me, I feel you. My heart is always obligatory blind betting on Jim Miller, but I think this is a tough matchup for him. I got Roosevelt Roberts here, and I'll explain why, but as I stumble upon, my God, for as long as I whack at some of these fights and some of the stats and things I'll pick up and go into, you'll think like my notes are some of the most in-depth things, and depending on what notes we're talking about, you're right. However, the single-page podcast notes that's like my final draft of things that I'm collecting certain notes on, but just jotting my plays down. The thing has the most weirdest. Sometimes it'll be stacked with like useful notes, and then there's many weeks like this week where there'll be like fucking 2 notes for the whole card, and it'll be one I just gave you, Volkov, which just says Volkov Metalocalypse cornerman, and the other note is Jim Miller Black Dildo. Damn, this is a family program. Sorry, anybody that's been to Jim Miller's Instagram knows where I'm going with this. Just so this isn't. I mean, not that Dan Tom doesn't have a sick, fucked up head, but this actually is not incarnated from that. Believe it or not. Yeah. So interviews and social media is almost more important to see where these fighters' headspaces are at in this pandemic time. And old Jimmy might be losing it out there on the farm in Jersey, in Stillwater, Jersey. You go out there, and apparently, he's laying electric dog fence, and I'm like, God damn it, Jim Miller, as Jim Miller says, it's for their freedom before people start giving him shit. But then I also see he's got the electric dog collars. I'm like, God damn it, Jim, what's going on? What is that thing live long enough to be the hero or live long enough to be the villain? I'm like, don't go Daniel Cormier on me. People don't know I've always been a big DC fan, but then in recent years and especially now in recent months, I'm just like from cracks in the fighting style to the personality, even with this fighter pay talk and this really he's really not helping the teacher's pet stereotypes. Let's just say. And even though part of me wanted to still wave the flag to kind of poke at friends of mine, who who dislike DC. Now, I don't even know if I can play that heel gimmick now. And unfortunately, I feel like, another, like, a long time, guy, it's like, like MMA, man, fucking, you stick around long enough and you just, and here I am being a hypocrite. I'm not being serious, folks. I'm not trying to be all cancel culture just because you find a facet of someone's opinion, personality you don't like, but in a semi-joking spirit, I'm like, oh, what's going on here, Jim? Anyways, he's laying the electric fences for the dogs. And he stumbles upon a big black dildo. He's like, what's this? And I don't know. He's this whole breakdown on it. And it just looks really bad because he's waving it around. You can hear his kids like playing in the background. I'm like, oh, Jesus. He's got this big American flag, tied around his head. I'm like, what the fuck is going on, Jim? And then he's got his other like quarantine, like he's got posts like later on. And like he's like talking about his haircut or something, and then all of a sudden he's got the dildo in his hand. I'm like, what is going on, Jim? Like, there's a lot of racial sensitivity and unrest going on. You're fighting a black man, and you're taking to your Instagram wearing an American flag, waving a black dildo around. I don't know what people are going to take from face value. Jesus Christ. Damn, we want a breakdown. What are you I'm sorry, folks. This is where my breakdown led me, and I just ended up on this rabbit hole. And I didn't check Jim Miller's Instagram, but I hope he kept up with the gimmick and tried to sneak that thing through security. Business or pleasure? Both. All right. On that note, I got Roosevelt Roberts. What a segue. God damn it. I was about to say I got Roosevelt Roberts. I like him in this matchup for his length. And God damn it, that just got ruined. I'm trying to be serious with my analysis now. Now everything's going to be tied to that. Thank you, Jim Miller-san. No, I do like Roosevelt Roberts' length. Jim Miller traditionally doesn't do well against longer fighters. Not just for the obvious, it causes them to close the distance more, but closing that distance becomes dangerous when those long fighters have a ground game. When they don't, like an Alex White, it's okay. Not trying to take a shot at Alex Sling Blade. Alex White. Yeah, Dan, you don't want to take a shot at him as you include a Sling Blade shot. I'm sorry. I'm a douche. What can you say? But when they have a grappling game, particularly a guillotine game, again, Jim Miller, excellent guillotine, excellent black belt, but he's not beyond getting choked or guillotined himself by longer individuals, and Roosevelt Roberts has a mean one, and he can grapple from all positions. He even can wrestle some, so I don't know if he gets the finish. It might be painful to watch, but I like Roosevelt Roberts' volume, takedown, ground game, and propensity to finish. For that reason, I had someone ask me, I don't know if they want, I don't want to reveal them if they don't want to be revealed, but they asked me a great question as far as Draftkings, which I've been neglecting. Curtis Blades, I haven't taken a look at the price. I imagine he's going to be at the top of the list, as he should be, because he's going to be your highest scorer. But I think low-key scorers could be Brianna Van Buren, who we'll get to in a second, and Roosevelt Roberts, for who I just mentioned, volume. Jim doesn't, fight takedowns much. A lot of times, Roosevelt will go for him against the cage, and the propensity to finish, the numbers that he could put up on him, etc. That being said, well, actually, I am playing Roberts. He's going to be a parlay piece. He's one of my parlay pieces here in the three-piece, unfortunately. I know I'm betting against Jersey. Jim Miller, one of my favorites of all. Doesn't mean he's not one of my favorites of all time, folks. I just got to be honest as an analyst and honest with my audience as far as what I'm betting, for better or worse. It's the truth. Love Jim Miller, hearts with Miller-san, but the pick is Roberts. And I gotta go check Jim Miller's Instagram after this. Jesus, Dan, come on. Bobby Green, minus 250. And Clay Guida, plus 210. Back in the day, I used to call him Clay Gaudia. I don't know why. Because I'm dyslexic. That's probably why. Bobby Green, I can see why he's favored like that. He could be a hard guy to trust. He hasn't been the nicest to me or my Junkie Radio crew in one interview, but that doesn't mean I don't like him, because he was nice in all the other ones. And I can separate that bias for style. I like Bobby Green's style. He's very underrated in his wrestling because he doesn't use it offensively, but defensively it's very good, and I think we're going to see that against Clay Guida. He's also not bad with submissions. I mean, people forget Bobby Green getting submissions early on in his career, even earlier in his UFC career. Third round, even against wrestlers later in the fight, like Jacob Johnny Christmas Volkman, I believe, if memory serves. And you go early in his career, and he's hit them guillotines. Granted, they're on guys like Herman Torrado, which I didn't realize that guy was fighting back then. All the way back then, he was a PFL tourney fighter at 170. He's a thick, piss through steel 170. Also, off the top of my head, another guy who I believe is a smaller guy. A bantamweight, Enrique Briones, who he guillotined as well, I believe, off the top of my head. Little trivia there, Bobby Green. Clay Guida has been submitted 10 times now. Only been TKO'd twice, which was surprising. Brian Ortega flying knee, and Chad Mendez. So those are kind of athletic outliers / outlying submissions / in close positions. That being said, I would not be surprised if Clay Guida gets stopped by Bobby Green. That being said, the reason why he's only been TKO'd twice is because Clay Guida knows how to survive. B, but C, if that survival skill that I'm hinting and referencing in wrestling and grappling backfires on him against a better grappler, he ends up getting choked. So for that reason, I think Bobby Green inside the distance at plus 130 is worth a look at if you're looking for an angle here, because Clay Guida seems to only be more do or die, and especially if you really break, he's been hurting a lot of his fights recently. You look at who he's won, you do that whole math and dissecting math, like he's got to win over BJ Penn, but that was the ghost of BJ Penn, etc., etc. I mean, it gets pretty shifty there. So I'm gonna go with Bobby Green there. I'll probably end up sprinkling that plus 130, but Bobby Green is also the third leg of Jesus Christ. Speaking of, I'm giving Jim Miller shit for making jokes in racially insensitive times, but what I call the passenger 57 parlay. Always bet on black, as my man Wesley Snipes says, because I parlayed Blades, Roberts, and Green. I just happened to parlay. Gotta back the brothers. I just happened to play. That was honestly by coincidence, folks. And I was giggling as I did that. I'm like, wow, did I really just when I skimmed through to my process of elimination through parlay polices, I'm like, did I really just come up with all the black dudes that I'm picking and getting behind? I'm like, I guess so. It's at the risk of being me too in the cancel culture day. This is gonna be the passenger 57 parlay. Of course, hopefully you guys know me by now, know my intent. I shouldn't have to explain myself. This is, but yeah, that's. I don't think that's offensive, is it? Is it racist? Racist? Quote an old Bill Burr skit, which was also a Tosh Point skit, I believe. But yeah, you can get neighborhood at plus 108, and I just put 2 units on Blades, Roberts, and Green to get it done, because I like them, both as fighters and in these fights, even if it's against some of my favorites, like in the Jim Miller-san case. So there's that there. All right, Brianna Van Buren minus 225, Tisha Torres plus 185. I wanted to go bias for Tisha Torres. This is on the avoid list, but man, I'm rooting for Torres. I really want to pick her here, but when you look at the wrestling base, the brown belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the camp, another fellow stout stylist. Man, I think it's going to be a tough night for Tisha Torres. So I'm going to pick Brianna Van Buren. I think she could be a low-key score because she's going to have to go takedowns for DraftKings if you want to go contrarian, if that is even contrarian. But, yeah, I'll be rooting for Tisha, but the pick is Van Buren. Oscar Piechota. Oh, Danny's not an Ewok. Oscar Piechota, a.k.a. Detlef Shrimp, as I like to call him, minus 110, dead even with Marc-Andre Barrios minus 110. This is a tricky one. I like Piachota here, and I actually may play him if he goes to plus money, and this money keeps going up. Now, I guess I could get why the degenerate money, because no matter what side money comes into this fight, it's going to be degenerate. This is a degenerate fight. It's going to be coming in on Marc-Andre Barrios because he's more of a process-driven fighter, whereas Piachota is more of the finishing guy, and if it's going to be an ugly fight in the small cage, Marc Barrios should be able to push it up against the cage and make it ugly. Piachota, for better or worse, he's gotten check hook knockouts, or he's been knocked out with left hands, as we saw against Punahele Soriano, for hanging out outside of the cage. So I totally see the logic there. I just feel like it was bad decisions / bad performances / deceptively bad matchups, all kind of playing a role there. Not saying he should have won or was robbed or anything. I'm just trying to make the argument that Detlef Schrempf, Oscar Piachota, is better than he is perceived to be, or at least his record would lead on. So I'm actually going to pick him for being the better, not finished product, but on the floor and a poor propensity to get a finish on the feet. And I'll pick him, and I won't. If I do play him, it'll be a degenerate effing sprinkle, and only if he goes to plus money. Next fight, Gillian Robertson, still holding on to a slight favorite status at minus 115, minus 105, Courtney Casey. I picked Casey here, and when I was doing that skim through, where I'll admit, I didn't do the most hardcore, and I actually made a play here. I didn't do the most hardcore tape study on this one, but I did enough to make a pick as for the previously mentioned Junkie staff picks on the beginning of the week. And I was surprised to see Casey as the dog. I know she's taking it on short notice, but she just got done with a fight where she didn't take any damage, and she got used to fighting in the COVID era, so she's more active, has all that going for her. And Courtney Casey is another fighter who is definitely, again, whether you're picking here or like her, superfluous. It's hard to not be critical and not agree that, she is better than her record leads on. There's a lot of close decisions that could have gone her way and arguably should have gone her way. She hits deceptively hard. And she seems to, I think the move to 125 isn't going to hurt her size-wise. She's still going to be huge compared to all the girls, but now she's not killing herself or her performances as much with the weight cut. Quick turnaround, but again, 125, she's used to this environment, etc. Her specialties, arm bars, opportunistic jiu-jitsu play, should nullify Gillian Robertson's, and even though I was backing Robertson to make that jump against Barber, which, again, knee injury or not, which we'll reference again with the Modafferi fight, wasn't so wrong to question or play against Barber per se. However, not only did obviously Robertson lose, but I would argue she still didn't show me that comfortability. I didn't see that comfortability on her face or otherwise in certain striking exchanges or otherwise that I want to see. And Courtney Casey's a mean girl who brings the heat, man. So I like her a lot. I got her at plus 100. I usually am not one to be able to say that. Feels nice. Well, maybe we'll see if it feels nice right on the night. But it's rare for me to be able to kind of say a line early, unfortunately, and then for people trying to tail late. But we'll see if it goes back to plus money. But if it doesn't, play at your own risk. But I played it for plus 100. Next fight, I know people want to hear my take on this one. We got Frank Camacho minus 325. Justin Jaynes plus 265. I was leaning toward Frank to upset, even though I didn't hate on Steamroller, which sucks for Steamroller, legitimately. But Justin Jaynes comes in. Man, Justin, this guy, I'm so happy. I'm so excited to be able to see someone that you've seen fight, you've shared the training room with, you've gotten your ass kicked thoroughly a number of times by, make it to the big show. It makes me so freaking happy. I know a lot of Extreme Couture people with loose affiliations, sure, this or that. Some I'll claim the bias, some I won't. Justin, I definitely got to, man. Justin was the guy who only people in recent years started realizing like the Michigan scene, people were making a living as an amateur because they were being able to get paid and fight, and there wasn't any type of regulatory database or body really going on there. So Justin only has like a few of his amateur fights listed, but the dude, I think, like has over 50 fucking amateur fights, folks. And because while he wrestled in college in Michigan, just to stay competitive, shape, some beer money, and he would fight. So his whole fucking college tenure and then some, he was sitting there fighting amateur, and then he would travel to cross train at Extreme Couture, like I think as early as like '09 back in the day. So I remember him coming out to Tough Enough fights. Like if you see, I don't know if it's his official nickname, Guitar Hero on there. You're wondering why? Because he used to come out and again, Guitar Hero was more popular in the mid to late aughts. So he would come out with like the Guitar Hero guitar on his walkout. And like I remember one time he came out wearing a shirt that said "I shaved my balls for this." Like Justin is a fucking character, but he's also a mean motherfucker. He works his ass off. He runs the boot camp classes because he's a disciplined dude. He's up early to hunt. You know what I'm saying? Like he don't care to get up early. He's a fucking tough wrestler. But not just that, he's a wrestler who doesn't mind jiu-jitsu. He's like a legit brown belt in jiu-jitsu. Maybe a black. He could very well be a black belt. He's really good. He knows how to do chokes. He's very capable in position, scrambling defensively, offensively. Very savvy. Ride like a motherfucker. Will just punish you. And then on the feet, he's heavy-handed. He's a shorter, stouter guy. He would kill himself to make 145 because he's only 5'7", but even at 155, being a shorter, stouter guy, he's got heavy hands. He's never been stopped or submitted. He's very durable. It's not hard to find hip footage of him dropping guys with his left or his right hand, or beating guys down with leg kicks, kind of like I said in the tweet before. Like, dude, like, and again, I know I'm fucking nobody, and I never said I was, but I have spent the majority of my life throwing punches and kicks with people, and some of those people were pretty good people, and Justin was one of them, and my God, did it suck to always when I get paired up with him. And I would take solace, my southpaw, his outside leg kick's not going to be that strong. Well, like, that like little cheap little outside leg kick you do in the open stance where you really have to shift your stance open to hit him on the outside leg. It's like, because the powerful leg kick on an open stance matchup is an inside leg kick, right? You got to do one of those weird ones where usually you have to disguise it with a cross to get the angle to step to the outside, and then you can come out their outside leg to hit it with a leg kick to the thigh, the outer thigh there. Those are harder to put mustard on, and like fucking Justin would cripple me with those ones, dude. Like that's how strong his weak leg kicks are with his like weak leg. Like, yeah, and you look at how Frank Camacho, like as my buddy Keith McKenna pointed out, in that Jing Liang fight, and even others, like win, lose, southpaw, orthodox, you can span relevant UFC fighters across 4 of his recent fights who, no joke, landed 100 percentile of their leg kicks thrown on Frank Camacho. So, I haven't been up to date or in the gym lately. I'm not going to front or anything like that. Pretend to know anything like that. And even things I do know, I keep things in-house. But let's just say that the leg kick thing that I was hinting at, that are backed by stats, coaches at Extreme Couture aren't coaches at Extreme Couture for nothing. They know what's up. So it's biased. It is absolutely biased. Do not follow me off this cliff. But not only you bet your ass on my pick and Justin Jaynes, and I love Frank Camacho. He's one of the nicest freaking dudes. But he's another guy, along with Josh Emmett, who I think is prone to miss weight. Like, he needs everything to go right for him to be at 155. Like, I'm surprised they haven't kicked him out from the weight class because he's missed it so much and has had to done catch weights and stuff, even regionally. Like, and even in interviews where he's super positive and, said he came in shape, he still has to sweat this weight cut because all he's been able to do is at home workouts in Guam. And so he's only had the last 4 weeks and which is what, 3 weeks, because the last week is your weight cutting, you're traveling, you're doing tests, COVID tests now, media, quarantine, etc. I mean, so what? You got 3 out of the 4 weeks here in the U.S. before his fight. And then his opponent changed last minute. Frank Camacho, I believe he's a brown belt or a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but I believe it's an older. A lot of these guys that were ranked older, it's a more of an older style, and even, not all styles, old, relevant, unique, translate to MMA. They all translate in varying degrees, right? I'm not trying to call Frank out like he doesn't know what he does, but he almost gets too comfortable, like when he turtles in tripods. Like, yeah, well, it was Beneil Dariush, and Benny's a badass, and he choked him out. Benny chokes out black belts all the time, Dan. That's not necessarily an indictment. Sure, but even in that fight with Damian Brown, which you could argue that Damian Brown won, like, Frank Camacho almost got choked out by Damian Brown twice in the last frame of round one. Damian Brown, not exactly known to be a wrestler or back taker, but he worked Camacho in that first round. And if he was a little better, he could have repeated what Benny Dariush did. So that's kind of worrisome. Those fights are spread apart. Now you got a guy like Justin Jaynes, who is a good wrestler, who knows how to ride punish and can competently choke you out. Very underrated jiu-jitsu game. I think Justin Jaynes gets him out of there inside the distance. He could do it by submission, but, since the Apex started doing fights, it seems to have a magnet for the leg kick TKO, folks, and I'm going to call leg kick TKO. I only put a half unit on Justin Jaynes at plus 275, but I put a quarter unit on inside the distance at plus 425 because there is no TKO prop up. And as of yet, as the time I'm recording this, and again, he could get a sub too. So I just played him inside the distance, but I think he gets the leg kick TKO though, folks. So that's biased as hell, but there are some facts and stuff on that breakdown. So hopefully you found that useful. Yeah, he's not going to be outreached or out-heighted by Camacho, who's only 5'9", by the way, too. So, all right, Roxanne Modafferi still holding on to her slight favor status at minus 115, whereas lucky Lauren Murphy has creeped up to minus 1. Why do you got to say her name like that, Dan? I like Lauren Murphy too. I don't know why I say her name like that. To prove that I like Lauren Murphy, I actually played her at the same case as Courtney Casey when I was doing that whole spiel. I was like, what? Lauren Murphy's plus 100? I believe she fought recently too, although I don't believe it was in pandemic era. But she's just been looking great since she switched her camp, kind of like an interview I listened to with, that was a really good interview with James Lynch because they covered a lot in that one. But she was saying in that, like, she was actually undefeated before she went to the MMA lab and has been undefeated since she left the MMA lab. Not shitting on the MMA lab, but there's probably something to that. And her physicality, Roxanne and Modafferi, the key to her game, not just kickboxing and staying with it and clicking with John Wood or whatever you want to credit to. I think a lot of it, too, is the physicality that binds it together that she didn't really have before. Modafferi, that is, was really worked out of the PI. However, Murphy's always had the physicality. That's kind of been the strength of her game. And even that has improved to her performances, her cardio, making weight, and just, again, overall performing. And speaking of performing more than the strength, Lauren Murphy just really seems to be putting the skills together, whether it's her striking or her very underrated grappling. I agree with her there. I don't think she's going to be a pushover. There will be positions that if Modafferi gets her there, Modafferi could abuse and definitely perhaps get some damage off and win the round off of if she's able to let her advance that far. But I'm not sure if she's able to do that, even though the small cage should favor the type of fight Modafferi wants. Modafferi also has shown that she'll kickbox, and I just think it's going to be an ugly fight, but Lauren Murphy comes to life in ugly fights too, and I think her physicality and her flow, as in regards to her momentum she's got going on, is going to make a difference here. So especially if you see her go back to plus money, the value's on Murphy, and she is the pick as well. And again, I love Roxy, but I think Murphy's primed to upset here. Next fight, I don't even know if either of these guys were in. I think it was supposed to be like Joe Selecki versus someone else, and then now it's Max Roshkoff minus 190 with the comeback on Austin Hubbard plus 165. Hubbard will be coming up here with Curtis Blades as training partner. But this is Vegas's Roshkoff territory. You know, he's based out of here in Vegas, Extreme Couture. He's got his buddy Jaynes on the card now. He's gonna familiar faces and corners all around. And this dude's the real deal, you know. Choked out the experienced Zane in his second to last fight. Granted, has only had 5 fights. Not the most experienced guys aside from Zane and maybe his last opponent. But he's been treating them accordingly, man. I mean, this guy just a hybrid submission wrestler. It's just insane. I don't know a lot on his striking, and I'm not sure if we're going to find out a lot because I think he's going to take some routes that Mark O'Madsen... some water, please. Oh, man, Marco Madsen's international. They're going to fly him out to Abu Dhabi where it's all hot. Water, please. But I think he's going to take the Marco Madsen route, and I think Max Roshkoff's going to sub him. So that's the pick. It's a biased win again, folks. So don't follow me off the cliff. But, dude, for a guy who is going to be like a wrestling like 155 version of Charles DuBronx, anytime I'm going to see plus money next to a submission prop next to this guy's name, I'm going to take it. And for whatever reason, he's still hanging out at plus 145 by sub. So I took it. You don't have to follow me off that cliff, folks. Again, because I'm coming from a biased perspective here, but I feel like that's the way the fight's going to go. And I feel like if this kid's as good as we're all saying and expecting him to be, y'all are going to miss CM plus numbers like that next to submission props for him. All right, let's recap it. Longer than I thought, but all right. Taking Blades over Volkov. Taking Burgos over Emmett, a.k.a. Detlef Schrempf. Taking Marion Renault over Raquel Pennington. Taking Bilal Muhammad over Lyman Good. Taking Roosevelt Roberts over Jim Milason. Taking Bobby Green over Clay Guida. Taking Brianna Van Buren over Tisha Torres. Taking Detlef Schrempf. Detlef Schrempf is I'm sorry, that wasn't Josh Emmett. I'm sorry. Taking Oscar Piachota, Detlef Schrempf over Marc-Andre Barrios. Taking Courtney Casey over Gillian Robertson. Taking Justin Jaynes over Frank Camacho. Taking Lauren Murphy over Roxanne Modafferi. Taking Max Roshkoff over Austin Hubbard. I parlayed Blades, Roberts, and Green for some plus money at 2 units, a.k.a. the Passenger 57 parlay. Always bet on black. Straight plays, I got Courtney Casey plus 100. 1 unit on that I threw. Plus 100 on Lauren Murphy. I got her at. Threw a unit on that. Threw a bias half unit and plus 275 on Justin Jaynes. Props. Muhammad by decision plus 130, worth looking at if you're looking for an angle there. I play Green plus 130 inside the distance. Roshkoff by sub plus 145 inside the distance. Played both those, by the way, 3/4 units. And then a 1/4 unit sprinkle on another bias one there. Jaynes inside the distance plus 425. On the avoid list, Raquel Pennington versus Renault. It's a tricky one. Torres Van Buren, at least for me. And maybe not for you, but again, at least for me. Emmett Burgos, man. I'm going to be excited to watch that one, though. Believe you me. All right, folks. Hopefully that wasn't too painful. Thank y'all for sticking with me. We'll be back next week for some more breakdowns. I got a fun top 5 episode coming for you at the end of the month. So be on the lookout for that. Good luck this weekend. Much love to all my brothers and sisters, and always protect your neck.